The purpose of this instructional video is to walk you through the NAP buy-up tool. This is made available through the United States Department of Agriculture Farm Service Agency. In order to find a web page here in front of you, you type in the address FSAUSAPAS.com. This stands for United States Agriculture Policy Analysis System. This page can take you to any of the government program, but we're interested here is the NAP buy-up program. So we click on that, and it comes to this page here. This page is to help you try and figure out whether your crop is eligible, the premium, and then what's your payment, an estimate of your payments. So let's go through an example. First, we need to select the state, and we're going to use Michigan in our example. Then you need to go to a county, and we're going to use Leelanau, Michigan, as the county. First thing we need to do is what they call an RMA check. Is the crop you're thinking about covered in the Risk Management Agency, or do you need to use the NAP program? So we go down to Select Crop and click on it. And we want to do, say, tart cherries. That's not on the list, so you click Not Listed. If it's not listed, this lets you know that you need to use the NAP crop information versus going through the RMA. So we'll click on NAP crop information. And at this point here, we need to enter the crop you're interested in. So you have a long list of potential crops here. So we'll go down and click on cherries right there. Then you have to know the type of cherries. Let's use tart cherries versus sweet cherries. Then we need to select the practice, and the two choices are irrigated and non-irrigated. We'll use non-irrigated. The intended use can be fresh or processed. For our example, we'll use processed. And then you have to select the planting period. In this case, there's only one, but it is necessary to click it in order to move along in the program. What shows up next is some of the information you need to help make this decision. The FSA market price is 29 cents. That's set. That's what it will be as we go through. We have the Farm Service Agent's expected yield for that county, which is 5,967 pounds per acre. These dates over here are for the 2014 crop, which is the example in here, but this will still get you very close to the information you need for this year's. There is an unharvested factor of 80%. What this is saying is that if you do not harvest the crop at all, they're estimating that you'll save about 20% of your protected yield times price times 29-cent market price. The next thing you have to do is put in an approved yield, and we can do that in two ways. It may be that you know what your approved yield is, then you can just type it in. For example, 8,200 pounds per acre. The other way you can do it is to calculate your approved yield, and you can put in these blanks. And we're in a second here. We're going to put in a farm example, but I want to talk just a little bit about how you can get these numbers. You need at least 4 numbers. If you have 4 numbers in here, that would suffice to find your county expected yield. If you enter fewer than 4, they're going to have to incorporate this FSA expected county yield. If no yields are available, they're going to take this 5967, multiply it times 65%, and that will be your yield for each of the last 4 years, or it will be your yield. If 1 year is available, you can put in that 1 year, and 3 of the years, the other 3 years, would be at 80% of this Farm Service Agency expected county yield. If 2 years are missing, or otherwise you have 2, and it's important, consecutive years, then the other 2 years would be filled in with 90% of the county expected yield. If the last 3 years are available and it's only 4 years ago that you are missing, they will plug in 100% of this county expected yield. So that's if you don't have your yield. If you do have your yield history, we'll do it in the following manner. And this number here comes up here where you can fill in your data. So we're going to fill in this data here with an actual example from Leelanau County, and it will calculate it. This calculation is close enough to make your decision on. It may come out just slightly different after you work with your FSA office. It is important when you go from section to section to use either your mouse or the tab key. It's important not to use enter, or bad things will happen. So I'll use the mouse and put this in here and put 9178, as again, this is an actual example. 8134. In 2012, this farm had 0, which many tart cherries, if not like 98% crop failure, most people had zeros. If we look at 2011, we're at 6274. I'll use my tab key to go on down. 4480, as you see, these are a little bit more like the county, so your yields might be a little bit more variable, but given weather patterns here, this is a pretty good example. 2008 will be 6667, only half of what they received the next year. 2007 is 9268, 7916, and in 2005, 8837. When you get this here done, you can click Calculate My Approved Yield. And it came out here to be 7740. If you want to correct that or look at that, you can just click this again, and all those numbers come up. In addition, notice where we put a 0 in. It's called a plug yield. When you're below 65% of the FSA expected yield for that county, the plug yield is 65% of it. So 65% of 5,967 is this 3,878.5 that you see on this chart right here. So after you've calculated the approved yield, you need an anticipated yield. This is the yield you expect to get this next year. It's one you may use for budgeting, for example. In this case, the approved yield would probably not be a very good anticipated yield because of the real bad 2012 crop year. But if you don't have a good idea what your anticipated yield be, use the last few years straight average, but don't use 2012. You then have to put in some estimated acres. Let's start with 50 acres that you have of these tart cherries, and put in the real number. I know it's a fairly large amount, but next thing you do is you look at share percentage. How much of this do you receive? We're going to go 100, but if there's multiple owners or multiple people sharing the risk of that crop, it may be different. At that point, then you go calculate premium. So we have the right county and so forth. There are 5 coverage levels. One is the basic, which used to be called cat coverage. It is a 50% yield guarantee of your approved yield. There is no premium for this one. You do have to pay the fee. And the coverage, if there's damage, is 55% of the dollar lost under 50%. Then we have our 50% coverage. So 50% of our approved yield is 3,870.2 pounds. You multiply that times the market price, which is just under 29 cents here, and you have a yield guaranteed value at the market price of $1,104.56. The premium per acre then is 5.25% of this number, or $57.99. This last number then is how many acreage you have. So we multiply the premium per acre times, in our case, 50 acres, and we have the premium for 50% coverage of $2,899.48. We also can go through the same method with 55%, 60%, and 65% of these different levels following the same method. These are all, like this is 65% of my approved yield. Notice that none of these numbers over here are greater than $6,562.50. Producer maximum is capped at $6,562, and we'll go through an example in just a minute to explain how that works. You come down here for the estimated results. As you can see, if you get your 8,200 or above, these numbers here correspond to your premiums above because you don't gain anything and you have those costs. This is the commodity revenue if it was worth the 29 cents a pound. And we gradually start taking off some yields, or decreasing the yield as we go down. And for quite a period of time, until you get under 4,920 pounds per acre, the number are 33 per acre. The numbers we see in this line are the same as your total premiums. And then as we start to decrease here, in this case, 4,920, you see this number here is smaller than your premium. What that means is you've gotten some payment that's that's paid back the difference between your premium level and this amount here. As we get down to 4,500 pounds of your insurable yield, you see that not only have you paid off the whole premium here, but you've also received a payment of $36.69. The 50% payment starts coming in at, as you would expect, 50% of your yield guarantee per acre. So these gradually go up, and as we come down through here, you can see you get what you receive gets higher and higher as you go down. Here's a very small, basically probably the smallest amount that it might be worth going in and harvest for, and what your payments are. If you get zero crop, you see the numbers get a little bit smaller. And this is where the unharvested factor comes in. They basically taken that 20% of your yield guarantee as the cost of going through there. So since you save those costs, your payments go down. That's only if you do not harvest that at all. So these are the payments here. As I said, is adjusted for an unharvested factor. The fees shown above right here do not include the fee per crop. These are just the premiums. If you want to know the total premium and fees, you click this button here. So we go down here and we click this button, and we come in here and we want to put in tart cherries. As you see, my first one was a spelling error. The premium amount was 3769.32. So if we want to calculate premium and fees, we click this number here, and at the bottom here you have the calculated premium, which we put in to 250, and the total premium and fees. This is just for one crop. That's pretty easy to do in your head. A second thing that we want to show here, though, is there is a maximum premium across all crops. So let's see what it would take to hit that maximum premium for just this tart cherries. So if we go back and we hit NAP crop information, and we come down here, and let's say we have 100 acres. We go to calculate my premium, and you'll notice over here when you get into both the 60 and 65 that the maximum you have to pay is $6,562.50. What this is, it is 5.25% of $125,000, which is the maximum amount an individual can receive under the NAP programs, whether it be, in this case, all tart cherries, or whether it be a combination of crops. And a little bit later on, we'll go through a combination of crop. To determine which coverage you want to use is not something we can really get into here, but the bottom line is how much protection you need. At this point, we would like to look at another type of crop that you could grow, which is be called a value crop. And we'd like to use Christmas trees. We cannot start right here. In order to do that, you have to hit Reset Page, and you pretty much go back to the very beginning. At this point, you have to put in, select the state, as we did before. We're going to continue with Michigan. We're going to continue with Leelanau County. Okay. Again, we have to see whether the crop is under Risk Management Agency or whether we have to go to the NAP program. I don't see Christmas trees there, so I'm going to put not listed. If it's not listed, that means we can go to the NAP crop coverage. So we come up here and put, as we did before, the NAP crop information. Right in here we have Christmas trees. We can click that. What type of crop? How about Fraser fir? Select a practice. We're going to say not applicable. In this case, there isn't a practice such as irrigated and non-irrigated, whether you use it or not. And they're fresh. You have to go to planting period. Again, even though there is only one, you do need to click it in order to move on. This is a very different thing. You're not trying to protect some yield. You're trying to protect some value. That value can be of your whole Christmas tree farm. That value can be for a particular year you planted trees or something along those lines. We're going to pick an example of $100,000 of value in there. Again, I'm going to say that the share percentage is 100%. I'm the sole owner receiver of this NAP coverage. The basic then is going to be $50,000, the same program that's been around for many, many years. 50% of 100,000, of course, is 50,000, 55, 60, 65,000. As you see over here, this is the premium. Then what would happen is if there was some type of disaster, for example, you could go, if something happens and you go out and count dead trees, if over half the trees are gone, and there could be other factors, but if half the trees are dead, you would start collecting at that point on the 50% policy. On the 65% policy, if over 35% of the trees were dead. There's the same thing as before. There is some maximum premium on all those, and we'll go through and look at an example of how that happens in just a minute. So here's the premiums. We come down here to the estimated values. Again, at this point, until we get down to 65,000 or right at 65,000, you see everything in parentheses is money out of your pocket, and it's exactly the same as your coverage premium. As you go to 55, you start getting some coverage under the 60%. And as you see, as you go through here, the coverage keeps going up. At this point, the coverage never goes over 125,000. As we look at that, the premium, they keep going up and down here, and there is an unharvested factor. The unharvested factor for Christmas trees is 75%. So they're going to assume that if you don't harvest, they're going to subtract off 25% of the payment you would have received for 100% loss. In this case, 100,000 divided by 2 or 50,000. Again, if we want to calculate our total premium and fees, we can hit this button here. We come up here, and then here we're going to put Christmas trees. Let's say we're going to take the 65% level, so it's going to cost us $3,412.50. But let's say we're the same farm that was growing 50 acres of tart cherries, not the 100-acre example. So if we put tart cherries here, the premium was $37.69.32. And if you have multiple crops, it's important when you're using this tool to write these down each time so that you can get these total. So here we have these two at these two different premiums. We hit calculate premium and fees. And at the bottom, if you'd added those two numbers up, it would have been $77,182 approximately. You notice here the premiums for all crops is listed as $6,562, and what that means is that is the maximum we've talked about a couple times, which is 5.25% of the $125,000 maximum. When we look at fees, we look at $500 because that's $250 per crop, and that is owed still for each crop. So if you had 6 crops here, this premium for all crops would still be $6,562, but you'd add up $250 fee for each of the different ones. So when you add those together, your total projected premium and fees add up to $7,062.50. The fees are due as you sign up for the NAP protection. The premiums are due closer to harvest time. At this point, we've been through a couple of examples of this. If we reset the page and go back to the beginning, just so we know where we start, tool really is an excellent estimator to help you make your decision on perhaps whether you want to use NAP at all, which level of insurance you may want to choose. And you can probably come pretty close to a decision on whether this is something you want to do. But as it is an estimator, at this point, you now have to work with your county farm service agency. So if you don't have the information to do your proven yields, then you need to collect that information, and then you need to work with them on what your actual expected yield will be that you can use for your NAP program. If this seems to be a tool that you can use, your next step is to gather all the pertinent information and then head down to the Farm Service Agency. Anytime when you build a program such as the one we've just went through, there's always some ifs, ands, and buts. There are a few things that you may have heard about or may be important here that works in this program but didn't come through real clear. For example, tart cherries. Tart cherries actually has an RMA pilot program. However, anytime there's a pilot program, you're also allowed to use the NAP coverage. So let's go through a list. A crop is eligible for NAP coverage if any of these 3 conditions exist. No crop insurance facilitated by RMA. That's the one that's pretty clear. Then there's a couple others. Risk management crop insurance is available, but that does not have basic, what has been called in the past, CAT coverage. And a third one is RMA insurance is available for that crop, but you may have a type or an intended use that is not covered by the RMA facilitated insurance, and therefore you're allowed to use NAP crop coverage. For example, cucumbers. So let's go to Michigan again. We're going to go to Gratiot County, where they grow pickles and cucumbers. We're going to select a crop, and in this case, it's on the list, cucumbers. So that still looks like we can use Risk Management Agency facilitated crop insurance. However, when you go over to select type, it's not pickling. Let's say it's not listed. That makes you eligible for NAP coverage. So we'll go up and click NAP crop information. Again, we have to select a crop of cucumbers right here. You look and you select the type. Let's say it's common. You select a practice. Doesn't really matter which one you pick there. And let's say it's fresh. Okay, your planning period you have to pick even though there's only one choice. And there you get to where you go through, just like we did before, the information for NAP coverage, and you motor on just like we did in the other ones.